Hello, my name's Awdry and I'm one of the Knowledge Exchange Managers here for AHDB Dairy covering the Southwest. Today we've been at Perry Farm, one of our strategic dairy farms who were holding their final meeting. We covered a range of topics looking at transition management, best drying off protocols to avoid mastitis, and then we looked at reducing anthelmintic usage on farm and the roles of dung beetles within the environment. One of our speakers today was Mike Kirby from Synergy Vets. Mike, do you want to introduce yourself and cover some of the topics and key points we spoke about at today's meeting?
Thank you, Laura. I'm Mike Kirby. I'm a vet at Synergy Farm Health, based predominantly in the middle of Dorset, but extending into Devon, Wiltshire and Hampshire. And my topics I covered today were transition health and drying off protocols. Transition health is the centrepiece of a lactating cow's life, really, in the preparation up to calving, and we focused on the importance of drying off at the right body condition score, maintaining that body condition score throughout the dry period, and then also controlling inputs into the rumen, such the rumen health, flora and fauna are at optimal levels to maintain maximum dry matter intake throughout the dry period, and preparing also for the dry matter intake immediately after calving to reduce the impacts of negative energy balance that all dairy cows undergo. We also focused on the importance of controlling hypercalcemia, both at a clinical level, known as milk fever, and also at a subclinical level. And then we also focused on the purpose of a dry period and the importance of regenerating and repairing udder tissue, eliminating and preventing new infections throughout the dry period, and then also focusing on the production of high quality and specific antibodies within colostrum relating to the farm's own pathogen challenge. And finally, we touched upon the effect of stress and minimising the effects of immunosuppression, again which affects all cows at and around calving.
One of our other topics we talked about today was drying off protocols, and we're obviously in the parlour here at Perry Farm. Mike, what are some of the key top tips for drying off that people should be looking at on their own farms?
So the importance of drying off in terms of preventing either introduction of acute infections or new infections that are potentially going to cause mastitis in the next lactation is attention to detail vis-a-vis hygiene. You want a very clean environment. Ideally you want to do it separately from milking, but immediately after milking, and then you start preparing the teats as if you were going to treat them in a sterile environment, which means washing them, drying them, stripping them, applying pre-milk teat disinfection and then wiping it off, and then individually, one by one, cleaning the teat end either with medicated wipes with antibacterial agents on or surgical spirit on cotton wool. So when you've prepared the teats scrupulously, then infuse the teat sealant and or dry cow antibiotic, holding the teat at right angles to the udder. Hairy udders ideally would be singed or clipped about a week before this procedure.
One of the other things we spoke about today was how Kenton and Charlotte have got a very low antibiotic usage on their farm. They have a very low rate of transition disease and metabolic disorders, and again they have a very low rate of mastitis. Mike, what are some of the key aspects you think in terms of why this farm here is achieving such good results?
Without a shadow of a doubt, it's Kenton and Charlotte's attention to detail that brings out their success, particularly through transition and the management of the calving environment. They are relatively low stocked because they have big yards, big feed space and big water troughs, and they are very, very generous with their bedding. Supervision of calving is paramount, and consequently it's reflected in their results. Of 175 calvings, they had 1 metritis, 2 with retained placenta, and that includes 14 calvings being twins, which would normally be expected to produce a few more cases of retained placenta. Consequently, because they've had no metabolic disease, there were no cases of mastitis in the first 30 days, no cases of LDA or ketosis it all points to a really good transition, and particularly with energy balance, such that they were in the perfect position to achieve a really good performance figures in their block calving breeding season, such that in the first 6 weeks 77% of the herd were confirmed in calf.
We also spoke about nutrition today at the meeting, and I'm here with Vicky from Kite Consulting, who is the farm's nutritionist. Vicky, do you want to introduce yourself?
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, so my name is Vicky Hicks. I'm a farm consultant from Frome, and I've been working here at Perry Farm for well over 6 years. And today at the meeting we spoke about transition cow success that they achieve here. So I'm just going to give a couple of top tips that we tend to focus on. So one of them is a strategy to control calcium. And here at Perry Farm we run a decab diet. So we feed several low potassium forages. We feed a haylage type forage that hasn't had any slurry on it. We feed a whole crop wheat silage as well, which again is an excellent dry cow feed. And then we also feed brewer's grains as well, which again, excellent dry cow feed because of its low potassium levels. So that combination topped up with some minerals and some anionic salts and a bit of rape meal for that additional protein really help control keeping the calcium low, providing a source of vitamins and antioxidants in the mineral pack as well, and then they're also able to achieve good energy metabolism status because we feed rumen protected choline as well. So that really handles the fat metabolism through the rumen, and it seems to be working, Laura, as well, because we didn't have any cases of ketosis. And in fact, we did only have 2 cases of milk fever, and that was when we ran out of minerals, and there were two sets of twins. 2 sets of twins, yeah. So not a bad run for 120, 130 cows calving in one go.
We've just talked a lot about obviously how important the diet is during that transition period, but Vicky, what are some of the other factors, some of the cow factors perhaps, and other things, environmental factors, that are also really important to make sure that you get a consistent transition period?
Well, one of the big things can be stress. So things like group moves, but actually overstocked yards can be one of the biggest thing. And of course, we can't always help overstocking sometimes, especially in a block calving system. We've got all the herd going through that system in a short space of time. But yeah, overstocking can be a huge challenge, especially if you've not got enough feed fence space either. So really need to be providing nearly a metre's worth of feed space per dry cow in there. Because keeping that rumen fill full as possible is really crucial to actually preventing those LDAs that we might get post-calving because of those drops in intakes. So yeah, rumen fill is really important to monitor. The other thing that can sometimes happen, particularly at this time, I mean, it's a nice day today, is actually heat stress. So cooling dry cows is really important because one of the really cool facts that I always pull out is a heifer born to a cow that was heat stressed, when that heifer then comes to milk in her first lactation, she'll actually produce about 500 litres less. And that's down to the epigenetic effects that occur because that cow's been heat stressed. So it's really important to invest in cooling of your dry cows as well.
I'm here with Bruce Thompson, one of our other speakers here at Perry Farm's final event. Bruce, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Bruce. Today we're talking about parasite management, integrated parasite management, implementing different grazing strategies to reduce worm usage. We're looking at biodiversity and we're looking at how dung beetles can give back towards farmers in terms of parasite management.
On farm today, we were looking at diagnostic tools and things that you could be doing yourself to sort of monitor that parasitic burden you've got on your farm. Bruce, what are some of the things farmers could be doing?
Okay, so in a rotational grazing system, we can use diagnostics to figure out when we need to go in. We need to get baseline and animal performance weights. So a weighing scales or a weigh band is a good piece of equipment to get. And kick open some dung pats.
We're on farm today at Perry Farm. We were making sure that we looked to see if there were dung beetles evident, and we did manage to find some. What were your techniques, Bruce, that you used for us to establish if there were actually colonies on farm?
Okay, so what we're doing is, the very simple way of doing it is go out, find a dung pat that's about 3 days old, and pick it up with a spade, drop it into a bucket of water, give it a bit of a swish about, and see what floats up out of it. That would be the adult dung beetles we're looking for. If we look at a dung pat that's about 3 to 4 weeks of age, scoop it open, look at the soil, at just where the dung pat touches the soil, and we're looking for little grubs. They're the baby dung beetles that we're looking for.
And if you're finding adult dung beetles within that cow pat, but then you're actually not finding them in those cow pats sort of 3 to 4 weeks later, what could actually be some of the reasons why that's occurring?
Yeah, well look, time of year is something to do with it. Different species emerge at different times. The anti-parasites we're using, fly control and wormer products that we're using can have a negative effect on the populations of these beetles. High grain diets and soft grasses are also lead to lower populations.
We spoke today also about how it might not be vital to actually treat all of your herd quite often, and that you need to be assessing your herd. We spoke how it was still really important obviously to make sure that dry cows were treated with fly treatments to prevent mastitis. But Bruce, what are your views on treating adult cow populations for fly control?
Yeah, so I would think that the dairy cows that are coming into a parlour twice a day, there's a fantastic opportunity there to use a teat spray that has a fly repellent in it, negating the need for a fly control product.
And in youngstock, what are some of the strategies we could be looking at youngstock with fly control strategies?
So fly control, rotational grazing will help, and using different products like Stockholm tar, and then leaving out the start date that we start using it. We're inclined to go in a little bit too early, a bit trigger happy when it comes to using it, because it's what we've done last year. Just wait till we know the conditions are hand in hand with fly populations, and then go in.
And any other alternative sort of things you can think of that might work?
Yeah, there's garlic products, there's licks, there's boluses. They all seem to work, and they will not affect the dung beetle populations.
We also spoke today about how to worm and when to worm, and what are those trigger points. Bruce, have you got any advice for farmers out there working out when they need to bring that worming strategy in and if it's needed at all?
Yeah, okay, so the wormers are very important products, so we need to protect their futurity. So we don't want to be bringing resistance onto farms. So we need to just use those products in a very targeted approach. We take fecal samples, send them off to the lab, or your veterinary practitioner might be able to do it as well. Based on that results and your vet's advice, go in and worm the animals. Take out the animals that are suboptimal in terms of their average daily live weight gain, and worm those animals, leaving the rest undone.
And how often should people realistically be weighing their young stock to monitor that performance in that sort of grazing and growing season?
To be able to do that process, I would say every 4 to 6 weeks, and you will be weighing them then when you're worming them anyway.
Well, thank you, Bruce, for taking the time to come over from Ireland over to Dorset here for Kenton and Charlotte's final strategic dairy farm meeting. If you would like any more resources about dung beetles and how you can look at lowering anthelmintic usage on your farm, there's a really great website called Dung Beetle for Farmers, which you can visit. And just again, a massive thank you to Kenton and Charlotte at Perry Farm for hosting us today for their final meeting as a strategic dairy farmer for AHDB.